Welcome to the flexi-band workout. We're going to start with a warm-up. I've created loops at the end of my band to make handles. You can just wrap the band around your hands otherwise. Make sure it's nice and taut, and we start in a plie. We're going to go into a plie, raising the arms above the head, keeping those elbows nice and straight. Remember to keep your abdominals engaged, and as you are doing your plie, you're pushing those knees out towards the baby toe. So the rotation is in your hip joint and not in your knee joint. Remember to go as low as what is comfortable. You don't want to put too much strain on those knees because we are still warming up the body. Now we take it into a rotation. So we are working in that plie position, remaining in the bent knee position, and just rotating from the waist. Your head stays in line with the band, and you're keeping tension on that band the whole way through the movement. The arms are at shoulder level. Now we're going to go into a lateral flexion. So we take the arms above in our plie, and you take the body over from one side to the other. Remember, you can modify all of these movements. So if it makes it easier for you to just do the lateral flexion without the arms above the head, that's also a possibility. And only go as far as you can without feeling any pain. Remember, pain is your message that something is going wrong. We're going to repeat that whole warm-up sequence again, starting off with your plie, with your arms going above your head. We're going to do this for 10 repetitions before we go on to our rotation movement. And into our rotation movement. Remember, the lower body stays nice and still. We are just rotating from the waist. So we don't want to be twisting in those knee joints. If you feel like this is too much pressure on the legs or the knees, you can do the rotation without the knees being bent. Again, we go for 10 repetitions side to side. And now we go into our third movement, our lateral flexion. Once again, we're going to go for 10 repetitions. Alright, so we're going to just change positions. Again, this is still part of your warm-up. You're going to stand in parallel with your knees slightly bent and your arms above your head. You're going to dive down like you're diving under the water and bringing it up. I want you to think of really sitting into a squat position and keeping those knees bent throughout the movement. As you are going down, coming up, really engage that core. Pull the belly button into the spine so that you provide support for your spine. Once again, we are going to work with 10 repetitions. Now we're going to go into a lunge position. Make sure that your back heel is off, front knee in line with the heel. We're going to rotate away from the front leg and then stand up onto that front leg. Lunge back, rotate, and stand up. So you're going to go as low into your lunge as you can without hurting those knees. It doesn't have to be very low. Ideally, that back knee is parallel to the floor. You want to make sure in your lunge that your front knee is not on top of your toes, rather it's on top of your heel. And again, remember to engage that core. 10 repetitions on one side before we go to the second side. And now on the second side, lunging back, rotating towards the back knee, and standing up. That front leg is the one that should be feeling the work predominantly. Really think of pushing down into the heel as you stand up. And again, just keep remembering that core and thinking of lifting up through the top of the head, nice long spine. And this brings us to the end of our warm-up. Let's go into the first exercise. Loop the band around your right foot and around your left hand. Wind it up so you get some tension, and you're going to be in a lunge position working on that bicep. As you stretch the legs, you take that hand up towards your shoulder in what's called a hammer curl. So we're getting nice resistance for the bicep. Remember that lunge position, you want that back heel off the ground. That back knee is ending up parallel to the floor when you are at your lowest point, and your front knee stays on top of the heel and doesn't track in front of the toes. 10 repetitions on the one side before we change to the other side. Once again, make sure you wind that band up so you get nice tension on the band, stretching as you do your bicep curl, and softening into those knees as you release that band. Try not to just let go of the band. Slowly lower that arm so that you are working with control. As we finish off, we're going to change the band to the other foot. Now we have same arm and foot working together. Taking the arm up to the side, rotating. Remember, this rotation is in the waist. Keeping those feet parallel in a nice wide stance. You're trying to work with those shoulders, with the chest, with the core, and the legs are stabilizing. Don't forget to breathe throughout that movement. 10 repetitions before we change to the other side. And we change to the other foot. Again, starting with the arm nice and wide, getting tension in that arm before we even start, and rotating. Just keep in mind, you want to keep the lower half of the body nice and still. If you need to give a break to those legs in between, you can straighten the legs and then drop into that knee bend in between each movement. 10 repetitions on this side. For the next exercise, the band is in both hands. Wind it up, but keep it quite wide. Standing parallel, squat. Take the arms over the back and in front to the thighs again. This is for some shoulder mobility, but you are working with tension on the band, so there is a little bit of strength involved as well. Work at a nice slow pace. You don't have to do it fast. And just keep in mind what you are feeling in your shoulders and your chest as you do that activity, because you do not want to overstretch those muscles or work too quickly. Remember, as you drop into your squat, keep that tummy pulled into your spine so that it supports your back. Again, we have 10 repetitions of this movement. And as we finish our standing work, we take it down to the floor. Hook the band around underneath your feet, holding it in both hands. Get some nice tension on that band by winding them up, sitting up nice and tall. Rotate those thumbs outwards and slide your elbows past your rib cage. This is your seated row. The whole way through this movement, you are keeping your body upright and you are drawing your belly button into your spine to create stability. If your hamstrings are tight and you find it difficult to sit with straight legs, you can bend your knees to relieve the pressure on those hamstrings. For part 2, tilt the pelvis and roll it into a half roll back. You're going to do 4 rows in this position before you come up to seated again. With this movement, we're working the abdominals as well as working into the rear part of the shoulders. Remember to exhale every time you draw those elbows past your waist. We're going to repeat the 4 rows and a half roll back 4 times. Now for the next exercise, you're going to get the band underneath your thighs. You're going to lie down on your back, cross the band over so that you change into opposite hands, and you're going to use your hands to pinion the band to your hip bones so that you've got some pressure on that band. We rise it up into a hip bridge, keeping pressure on that band as you go up into that hip bridge. Make sure you keep that belly button connected, and when you roll up into that position, first tilt the pelvis before you roll up. Remember to squeeze those bum cheeks, squeeze those glutes as you take it up so that your glutes are working as well as your hamstrings. We're going to work for 10 repetitions here. And now we add a variation where we go into our bridge and you push the knees open against that band. We're going to stay elevated in that bridge position so that those glutes are working to stabilize. Keep thinking of closing your rib cage so that those abdominals are working hard to keep stability. Now make sure your lower back is in the floor as you lift those feet off the floor, and we do that same external rotation movement with those feet off the floor. Remember, you've got to really use those abdominals to keep your back flat on the floor. Again, we're going for 10 repetitions. Placing the feet back down, we're going to do the same thing with one leg at a time. Make sure if your left leg is elevated that the right hip is staying still and heavy on the floor. So there's no movement across the back of the hips, and you are using those abdominals to help create that stability. 10 repetitions on one leg before we swap to the other side. And for our last movement on our backs, you're going to lift those knees up. Your hands are pushing away from your body, and we go into a reverse curl. So those knees are pushing against the band and the hands are helping to keep the resistance. Try and get those hips to lift slightly off the floor as you curl those knees into your chest. 10 repetitions. For the next exercise, we are going to go into a kneeling position. So put the band on one foot, and you're going to hold the band with the same hand on the same side as that foot. In your 4-point kneeling, we're going to take that leg up into a rear leg lift. Keeping the leg nice and still, try not to let the body move as you lift the leg so that you are working purely from the glutes, and pull the tummy in to support the spine. Now we're going to go into a donkey kick. So pulling the knee into the body and pushing out through the heel. Again, that body is staying absolutely dead still, no movement in that spine. 10 repetitions of this movement. And holding that leg up for 10 small pulses in the highest position. Giving the leg a break, take the arm out in front and open to the side. So a little bit of resistance with that band as we draw that arm forward. Keep those shoulders out of the ears by thinking of your armpits drawing down towards your waist. And now that the leg has had a break, we're going to finish off with one more leg exercise, what we call over the rainbows. You tap it up and behind, up and open. Working in as big a range as you can without too much wiggling in the body. And we repeat the series with the other side, getting that foot nice and snug in the band, and same arm as leg. Make sure that the knot of the band is on the outside of the foot. We start with our rear leg lift, 10 repetitions. Donkey kick, 10 repetitions. Arm movement, front raise to side raise, 10 repetitions. And the last two movements, starting with our over the rainbow, working in a nice big range, 10 repetitions. And finishing off with our 10 pulses at the highest part of your range. Right, we go into a side lying position, band on one foot, holding it in the hand of the opposite arm. You're going to lie right down, you can rest your head in your hand, wind it up as much as you can, and you're going to pinion that band to the floor for stability. You're going to be lifting the bottom leg so that we work those inner thighs. Try and flex that foot and turn that leg out as much as you can, and the other leg is keeping stability for you. 10 repetitions. And we're going to repeat another 10 repetitions after that short rest. Now get a bit more tension on the band, hold it against your chest so that you can flex and extend the knee. Keep flexing that foot, think of pushing through that heel. We're going to go for 10 repetitions. Quick rest and then another 10 repetitions of your flex and extend before we change over to our other side. Right, let's swap over to the other side, putting the band on the bottom foot, holding it with the opposite arm and pinioning the band to the floor, starting with your leg lifts, working with that inner thigh. Turn that foot out as much as possible so the toes are pointing downwards and the heel is pointing upwards. 10 repetitions before you give yourself a little rest, and then we're going to do another 10 repetitions. Right, let's get some tension on that band, holding it against your chest and into our flexion and extension of the knee joint. 10 repetitions. Quick rest and readjustment of the hand before we do our last 10 repetitions of flexion and extension. Right, we're going to sweep it around so that we can lie on our back. You're going to keep the band attached with one foot and again opposite arm. You're going to lift the foot that has the band on so that the knee is on top of the hip. You're going to extend the foot and the arm away from each other. Just make sure that your lower back stays connected to the floor and it doesn't arch off the floor every time you take the leg away. You've got to really engage those abdominals to make sure the back doesn't arch. If you are struggling, you don't have to lower the leg all the way to the floor. Work in a range that is comfortable for you. 10 repetitions on one side. Now we increase the intensity by hovering the other foot off the floor and repeating the same movement without the stability of our opposite foot being on the floor. If you're not comfortable doing this, you can repeat another 10 repetitions, keeping that foot on the floor. And we change feet so that we can repeat the same movements on the other side. Opposite arm to foot, lifting the foot that has the band, and reaching arm and foot away from each other, keeping that lower back nice and still on the floor. And also think of a clothes peg, keeping the rib cage closed. You don't want those ribs flaring open because then those abdominals are not really engaging. Really think of keeping that lower back onto the floor. We have 10 repetitions with the stability of one foot on the floor before we go into 10 repetitions with that foot hovered. Again, if you are uncomfortable with the other foot hovering, you can keep that foot on the floor. Remember, this is not a competition. You want to work where you are comfortable, where you are not going to end up with an injury. And this brings our last exercise to a close, and it's time to stretch. Start off by hugging your knees into your chest. You're going to hug one knee into your chest, and your opposite leg is going to lengthen away from you on the floor. Feel like someone is pulling that leg away from your hips. So you really open up the hip flexor. We repeat the same on the other leg. Don't forget to breathe while you're in your stretch. Try and relax your shoulders and everything into the floor. Now we're going to go into a hamstring stretch, hooking that band around the foot. Remember, with the stretch, you don't want to bounce. You're going to hold that leg in a position where you feel the tension in the hamstring at the back of the leg. Just breathe into it before you want to go into the next position, which is our inner thigh or adductor stretch. Again, make sure both hips stay nice and even on the floor, that you're not rolling off the opposite hip. Again, your abdominals need to work to stabilize you here. The last stretch here is to go into your glute stretch, so crossing one ankle over the knee and pulling the legs towards the body. Let's repeat all those stretches on the other side, taking that leg into the hamstring stretch and just breathing into that stretch. No pulsing, no bouncing. When you feel that it starts to ease, then you know that muscle is letting go. Taking it into your open position, your adductor or your inner thigh stretch, keeping both hips even on the ground. And crossing it over into your glute stretch. You can use that opposite elbow to push the knee open so that you really feel that stretch in the glute. Nice deep breathing as you release those muscles. Because they work so hard, we're going to stretch those quads for a moment. So lying on your side, grab one foot, pulling it towards the glutes. Think of pushing the knee back and the hip forward so that you really open up in the front of the hip and the thigh. And we change over to the other side. Your bottom leg can bend so that it can give you stability and you don't roll onto your front. Pulling that heel towards your glutes, pushing the knee back, pushing the hip forward, and engaging that core. Right, from there we're going to go into a quick recovery stretch, reaching out through the fingers. Nice deep breath, releasing that back. And we take it into a down dog, pushing the weight into the heels and just walking those heels, releasing the calves. Stretch into both heels, stepping it forward and softly uncurling it through the spine. Nice deep breath, well done.